So I saw this question and I was like, man, this is incredible. This is an incredible question. Roy L. chimes in. He says, Joel, big fan of you and the show. Thank you. Love when you and Gus come to Madison. I love coming to Madison as well. You've called so many games, but I have to ask you, if you could only pick one, which player had the best performance in a game you've called? That's so difficult. I loved the question, Roy, but I can't just mention one because there's so many incredible performances. So here's what I wanted to do. My top five best individual performances that I've seen. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context of what was going on that maybe you didn't realize at the time. Now, truth be told, there's a couple that I couldn't get on this list. So I want to mention those first real quickly. Kyler Murray in the Red River game. Texas ended up winning that game, but he had a run down the left sideline that was incredible. It's still probably the singular best play I've ever seen on a college football field. I couldn't get that one on the list. And then JT Barrett in Ohio State coming back against Penn State in that game against Saquon Barkley. Barkley took the opening kickoff back. I couldn't find the spot because these other five are like insane. They're absolutely insane. So let's start. I'm going to go 5-1, my best individual performances. And truth be told, number 5 is actually a dual performance. 2 players, same team, same game that absolutely were incredible. So number 5 is Marvin Harrison Jr. and JT Tuimoloau at Penn State in 2022. So the stat lines tell you a lot about what was going on. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 10 catches for 185 going against Joey Porter Jr. Now, context to that. Going into the game, this was thought to be like, hey, these are 2 first-round guys. Like, this is going to be difficult. This is going to be very difficult for Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of us thought he was the best wide receiver in the country. And so, like, that was the matchup we were all watching. And listen, like 7 for 80 would have been a good day, but he went for 10, 185 on 12 targets. But here's the most impressive part. All 10 catches went for first downs. It was remarkable sitting in the booth and watching him go to work. They were trying to hold him. They were trying to body him up, and he just kept fighting through. 4 of those catches were on 3rd downs or 4th downs. He was sensational. And so that matchup leading in and then the way that he performed, he totally dominated a player that we thought was also going to be a first-round player. And the enormity of the catches. It was at times like he was putting the offense on his back and they were moving the chains. In the same game, JT Tuimoloau went like full Thor on Penn State. He was incredible. I have never seen a defensive player wreck a game to the extent he did for a portion. He had 2 interceptions. We're talking about a defensive end. One was a pick 6 to seal the game. He had 2 sacks. One was a strip sack that he recovered. He also had a tip at the line that led to another interception. He was basically a threat to score on every offensive play for Penn State. I'd never felt like that about a defensive end before in my life, but there were moments during that game when I was just like staring at JT Tuimoloau because I was like, what is he going to do next? He was so dominant on the defensive side as an individual in the same game that Marvin Harrison was so dominant as a wide receiver on the offensive side. So that's number 5. Number 4, best individual performance, Aiden Hutchinson against Ohio State in 2021. Michigan had lost 8 straight against Ohio State. And backstory and context to this is like covering not only that game, but Michigan leading into that game. I don't know how else to say this other than like Michigan Stadium was a nervous crowd. That's the energy that they had during that entire time, late in the teens. So like 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. COVID obviously is a little bit different, but I'm looking up. And during that game, it felt tangibly different because Ohio State was so good that year. They were so good. Stroud was on fire. They had maybe the greatest wide receiver room in history. They have Garrett Wilson, Smith and Jigba. They have all those guys, Chris Olave. I mean, just like players. And yet, the crowd never devolved into this nervous energy. Why? Because of Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson gave the sideline belief, the stadium belief, in a lot of cases, the entire state belief that Michigan could end the 8-game losing streak. He was sensational. 3 sacks, 15 quarterback pressures, 15, most pressures by a Big Ten player in the last 10 years. And he did it in the biggest game against the best team when he had to. Hutchinson had to be great to stop that Buckeye offense. And by the way, here's the deal. Covering that Buckeye offense in 2021, I just remember always talking about the avalanche of points that they used to put up, like a run in college basketball, where all of a sudden it would be like score, 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 bang. And then all of a sudden they're up multiple possessions and you just couldn't come back on them. And they could never do that against that Michigan team, in large part because of Hutchinson in particular on third down. Like he was, as an individual, he was sensational. Stroud still went off. He threw for 394, throwing to Olave, Wilson, Smith, and Jigba that day. They never got on a run, though, because Hutchinson made it difficult on him. So that's number 4. At number 3, one of my all-time favorites was Baker Mayfield in Bedlam against Oklahoma State in 2017. This was an incredible game, an incredible environment. That was one of my favorites that I've ever called. It's on the road. It's at Oklahoma State, and they are just trading absolute haymakers. The game ends up being OU 62, Oklahoma State 52. Just wild offensive game. And for the first time, I can remember just experiencing the full Baker Mayfield swag. And it didn't matter what Oklahoma State was doing. He would just like roll out there, almost like Conor McGregor, like he's just... And then he would just drop bombs. He wasn't picking them apart. He was dropping bombs. Here's his stat line. 24 for 36. Doesn't sound great, right? But in those 24 completions, he threw for 598 yards, 6 total touchdowns. He averaged nearly 25 yards per completion. 24.9. I've never seen it that high. Never in my life. I'm just talking about absolute haymakers. By the way, I believe that was the birth of Hollywood Brown. I believe that was the game when Gus calls it like, where did this guy come from? And I was like, he's a junior college transfer from, whatever it was, College of the Canyons or something along those lines. But man, Mayfield was dropping dimes. I just remember like almost every offensive series for Oklahoma, he would drop back and like my hands would go onto my head. I couldn't say anything, right? Because Gus is calling the play and I was like, no way. I was like, ow! I'm screaming in the background. At one point during that game, I had to hit my mute button because I was just like, no way. So that was one of the like great performances that I've ever witnessed. Gus went crazy. You got nicknames out of it. He goes on. He becomes a Heisman Trophy winner. It had everything that you wanted right there. It had everything that you wanted. All right, number 2, best performance that I've ever witnessed in a game that I called, okay? Travis Hunter against TCU in 2023. You've got to understand the hype going into that game surrounding Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter. So this is their first game at Colorado. Some context to this game behind the scenes. And I don't know if anyone will admit this, but I basically went to the mat behind the scenes not with our executives. It's not like we were arguing. I basically pounded the table with our programming department to take that game with a high pick in the Big 12 draft. I believe I told him like, hey, like the second pick in the draft, if Red River is number 1, I think the second pick of the draft, which was ours, I was like, I think you should take Colorado TCU. And they were like, really? And I was like, yes, 2 reasons. 1, I knew that the hype train was so real that everyone was going to want to watch and see what it looked like when Deion Sanders was at Colorado and then Travis Hunter got to be there. And it's like they're taking on the defending national runner-up. TCU had just gone to the national championship game. And I thought it was way better to select Colorado early that season because I had no idea how they would finish, which, by the way, ended up to be true. But that was the backstory. That's the context, is I kind of pound the table and stick my neck out for that game in the game selection process to say, like, we should take that game. And the game ends up being insane. Great football game. And then all this hype surrounding Deion manifests and all the hype surrounding Travis Hunter manifests. We'd heard all these things about whether he can or can't play both ways. Well, he can do it at that level, but can he do it at this level? And this is the Heat, and this is Fort Worth, and it's the first game of the season, and it had to feel like it was 130 degrees on the field. And this guy went out there and was incredible. And from that day forward, I knew immediately that this guy was a star, that he was one of, if not the best player in college football, and that he was going to have as bright a future as anybody in this sport. He was incredible. 11 catches for 119 on offense. In and of itself, in 130-degree heat, very difficult to do. One of the best interceptions that I've ever seen in the low red zone when he comes off of his man and dives in front of the flat defender and ends up intercepting that pass. Unbelievable. What you won't see in the stat sheet is that on that series, he ran down the TCU running back on a 74-yard run. It looks like this guy is broken away. He's gone. And from the opposite side of the field, Hunter runs him down. He played 152 total snaps in 130-degree heat. He's got 11 catches for 119. He's got an interception. He's chasing people down. I'd never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. By the way, he actually dropped a ball in the end zone, kind of lays out, and the ball goes off of his hands right before halftime. And then Dion gave one of the great pre-halftime interviews with Jenny going into the locker room. She's like, man, that was an incredible half. What do you think? And he was like, well, Travis dropped the ball or else he would have had the Heisman at his crib resting. And I'm like, that line epitomized Deion Sanders and his swag. And now what was the swag of the Colorado program? So everything that led into that game, kind of reverberated through college football, but specifically Travis Hunter's performance. And the number one performance that I've ever witnessed in the booth, I've got to go into the Wayback Machine because no one's going to remember this, but I remember that night. I remember this night like yesterday. Tavon Austin from West Virginia against Oklahoma in 2012. Tavon Austin wasn't even a running back. He was a wide receiver. And because of injuries, here's West Virginia, who's welcoming in big, powerful Bob Stoops and Landry Jones and the Oklahoma Sooners, and they're rolling. They're winning Big 12 title after Big 12 title. And we go to Morgantown, and it was a night game. And we did this game, and all of a sudden, Tavon Austin starts lining up a tailback. And I'm like, well, this is kind of strange. They hadn't even really mentioned this to us in the pregame production meetings. And here he is. And guess what Tavon Austin did against Oklahoma? 21 carries for 344 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. By the way, he also had 4 catches as a wide receiver for 82 receiving yards, which means Tavon Austin that night against OU, 25 touches for 426 total yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 yards every time his fingers touched the ball. It was remarkable. I just remember coming out of my skin. They end up losing the game, unfortunately, because Landry Jones went off. He threw for 550 yards and 6 touchdowns. OU won it 50-49. It was an incredible game, but that performance, Tavon Austin, has stuck with me through it all. And those are my top performances. So just to recap, those are my top 5 performances that I've ever witnessed firsthand. Marvin Harrison Jr. in conjunction with JT Tuimoloau against Penn State in 2022. Aiden Hutchinson against Ohio State in 2021. Baker Mayfield and Bedlam against Oklahoma State on the road in 2017. Travis Hunter in his opening game at Colorado against TCU in 2023. That was on the road in the heat. And then Tavon Austin at home against Oklahoma in 2012 was remarkable. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.